Hi everyone, thanks for joining today for Tech Community Call number 4. So today it's going to be Victor and myself only, as we are going to focus mainly on, let's say, BSC update, Greenfield, and our layer 2s as well on BSC. So it's more about technical updates of what we have been doing and what is up on our roadmap as well for the next 1, 2, or 3 months. So this is something that we're going to discuss today. So hi Victor, how are you doing today?
Hi Arno, and happy to be here. And looks like we have been working on a lot of stuff on different projects. So we'll be happy to discuss it with you and see what's the community has to say about it.
Right, a lot of stuff has been cooked in the back, so we're looking forward to present about everything and make it more transparent for people as well. So let's jump in the first topic, which is around fast finality. So this is something that our community has been working quite heavily on it, but maybe let's discuss a bit first, like what is finality as well. So as you know, finality is really means that the transaction is really confirmed and done, which means that there is no possibility as well to change it or revert the specific transaction. So it's a really key aspect of blockchain, and it's something that is as well preventing double spending, for example. So let's say there are two kind of different finality. There's more the probabilistic finality, which is something that we can work, for example, in Bitcoin, which is a proof of work, where, for example, you can think of it like a snowball rolling downhill, where it gets more and more certain over time as more blocks are headed to the blockchain. So the more blocks you have, the more probabilistic finality you have as well. And then the other one, it's more absolute finality, which is a term which is representing, let's say, a higher order of security in a proof of stake blockchain consensus. So depending on the proof of stake mechanism used, like the finality can be considered either revocable and final under a certain amount of threshold in terms of block. So for ETH can be different, for BSC as well, or for other L1 as well is different. So today we're going to deep dive a bit about like what is going to change for BSC and how it's going to impact the block finality as well within BSC.
So BSC has a absolute finality?
Correct. So we consider it as an absolute finality and not necessarily a probabilistic one.
Okay, cool.
So today it's currently like at 15 block, let's say. So once we reach 15 block, then it's a finality. But we're going to see that with the fast finality, the BEP 126, it's going to be shortened as well. Like potentially up to 2 or 3 blocks will be considered enough to have a fast finality.
So that would put us, if 3 seconds per block, that would put us around like up to 10 seconds or within 10 seconds, something like this, right?
Exactly. That's kind of the aim. That's the target. This protocol update is really about to like fasten the transaction confirmation process to improve like the speed of which block become, let's say, irreversible in the state of the BSC chain.
Okay, sounds like very interesting update. And so how isn't like create some kind of security problem, or like why would anyone just do it within 1 block or 2 and that's it? Like, so how does this essentially impact the security perspective?
Right, correct. So with this new, let's say, layer that we are adding, we are going to require its validator to cast specific vote on which block they want to finalize. So this is something that we'll deep dive in the next slide. But definitely, it's like validator are a critical part of the protocol, as they are basically participating in the voting process that ultimately like finalize the final block. So they are a key aspect of our security on chain.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are as well specific rules that we are going to define in order that validator need to emphasize on specific rule to ensure that they are behaving not in a malicious way as well. So maybe let me jump on the next one. So here we can see a bit the mechanism and the rules as well for validator. So we have a few different assumptions as well. So the first assumption is like the set of validator is considered fixed. As you know, within BSC, we have a fixed set of validator every 24 hours, which is elected. And then out of those, currently we are selecting 29 validator every 24 hours. And out of those 29, every 10 minutes, we are selecting 21. So this is kind of, we are considering it fixed because usually there is not any other validator which is jumping inside the queue unless a validator has been jailed or, for example, or is unavailable for a certain period of time, then one of the inactive validator will potentially take a seat as well. So this assumption is really like that this set of group of validator is responsible for verifying and approving block, something which is stable and constant within a certain period of time. One of the other assumptions is that more than half of those validators are assumed to be honest as well. So currently, as I say, like out of the 21 active every 10 minutes, we expect, let's say 12 or certain, I don't remember the exact number, so more than 2/3 to be honest. So this is a fundamental assumption as well within our blockchain consensus mechanism, because it's assumed that the majority is behaving honestly.
But this is like general,
Correct.
essentially consensus. So it's not like something as more strict requirements. We just essentially stating the same thing. The BNB chain was previously proof of stake authority, so it was fixed, and it in a way, like for any blockchain to work, it needs at least half or even 2/3 of the validators to be honest. So this is sort of like basic blockchain finality requirements for the proof of stake blockchain.
Correct. It's one of the base, let's say, that is quite standard to all of the different consensus out there. And then we have as well the finality based on that. So basically, a block is more or less finalized and irreversible when it has received enough signature from 3/4 of all the validator, which means that in this context, we refer to a point where a block and this transaction within these blocks are considered confirmed and they cannot be reverted or changed once we have 75% of validator which have signed this specific block as valid, for example. So this is really what's ensuring our finality. Of course, if this, let's say, layer is not working, we still have the base finality, which is like 15 block within BSC to ensure our finality. So if a block doesn't receive enough, let's say, vote, for example, we still have our other finality, which is ensured in likelihood that something is reverted. Then we have the validator rules as well. So as you know, we have different rules for each validator to ensure that they are able to comply with the fast finality. So one of the rules is like a validator must not publish two distinct votes for the same height. So for one block, a validator cannot propagate two different votes, of course. So we need to ensure that it's only voting once per block. It's really designed to avoid double voting or creating conflict as well within the voting mechanism.
And this, I guess, like if one does do it, then it will be some kind of slashing.
Correct. Then we go after when we're going to discuss about reward and penalty, we're going to see that there's like some reward as well, and especially some slashing if validator is not behaving as per as the network rules, for example. As well as the validator is prohibited from casting a vote within range that is already covered by its previous vote. So for example, you have voted for the block -5, so you cannot vote again for this block or for the specific range before that. So you're really ensuring that you are maintaining a chronological order of your votes that is ensuring that we are making progress within the chain and that we are not forking, for example, so that we are always moving with the latest block that is valid. And this is the rule number 3 as well, where validator always vote for the last block in his own canonical chain to ensure that we are supporting the longest chain. I don't know if you had any comments to make on this one.
I think it's straightforward. Like I'm sure like it took half a year to develop, but like from the look of it, it's straightforward.
Right. So currently in the development phase, so it's already live on testnet. We've been deploying the second phase on testnet last week, if I'm correct, and we are finalizing as well. As you know, like every time there is some big update, we are doing some audit with different companies. So currently the finals audit are happening as well to ensure that it's not creating any issue or any other bug. So we are soon to be released on mainnet as well. The expected timeline is end of June or mid of June. So it's for a few weeks. We're going to see later on as well the timeline of each updates that are upcoming.
How do you think, so in the previous community calls, we talked a little bit about MEV. How is it going to affect somehow the existing practices, or like, because in a way it shouldn't, because it's not the block itself, but rather the finality of it. But how do you think about it?
I don't think it's going to have a big effect. Where it can help for sure is like, as you know, once your transaction is really confirmed with this fast finality, the incentive, let's say, to revert back a certain amount of block to utilize an MEV that has not been used, maybe that we haven't seen yet.
Like reorder the
exactly.
chain.
Exactly. So that would not happen, for example. Let's say that in 5 blocks from now, we realize that 2 blocks ago, we could have had a huge opportunity, like potentially like we could have a reorder, but now this is not possible anymore.
Right. So now, like, if at the current state you could still like rearrange this a few blocks, several blocks, let's say, because you still have like 15 until
Correct.
things really settle. Now, if you have 2 or 3 to the fast finality, then there's this. So in a way, there will be less possibility for MEV in terms of rearranging the chain for your benefits.
Exactly. Which is quite critical. Like the more value we're going to have locked, the more chances of finding opportunities looking back in time are going to appear as well. So it's really important to have such a strong finality. So as we discussed a bit before, like as well, you have like the voting reward as well, or the slashing mechanism, as you mentioned before. So we really, of course, like since it's something new that the validator need to do and they have a new, let's say, work that need to be done and a new responsibility as well, of course, they need to be incentivized as well by doing so. So by casting the vote early, they are basically helping in accelerating the block finalization. So when we say early, is like as soon as they receive a block, they're directly casting their vote on it instead of waiting a few seconds. So this is something that is helping as well in propagating it faster. Of course, they're going to get reward as well based on like how early they can be. And as well as like who can assess those, who can assemble all of those attestation and as well receive some votes. So all of those rewards are going to be paid out. But what we have a system reward contract that is running on chain that is sometimes collecting some fees based on our consensus. So this is something. So we're going to release maybe another article about showing exactly how the reward can be paid out and what's the mathematical formula around it. Which is basically showing what's the potential return as well for validator. It's not going to have a huge impact, of course, on APR, but it's more like a small reward since they're doing something as well. To be more responsible, they need to be rewarded as well. Then, of course, if they are not working as expected of the rules, they are potentially being slashed as well. So if they're not, for example, if they're violating the first 2 rules, then they have some repercussions, such as like as breach, for example, of evidence that is put, then everyone like you, me, or another validator can potentially as well like push proof that something has not been performed correctly and the evidence, for example, and then the validator will be slashed and put in jail. So it will be slashed up to the amount of the self stake, which currently is set at 2000 BNB. And then automatically being put in jail as well. So it says a high, of course, fine. And the whistleblower, so the one who is putting the evidence, of course, getting a portion of the reward out of this penalty. The other portion is usually being redistributed into other validator. What is important to notice as well, of course, like once a validator has been slashed, it cannot be slashed again for the same evidence. So it's the first one who is pushing the evidence, which is getting the reward.
No, yes, naturally. But he can be slashed for the same offense, like if it is done recurrently.
Exactly. Yeah. Correct. The cost will be quite high though, so I don't. Of course, the aim is not to have in such kind of event, but in case it's happening.
Why is the slashing amount is distributed before, like among the validators? Is it because like it seems like it's better used to be in some kind of vault? Because current, like for instance, if it is slashed, for instance, like 1000 BNB, then for that particular block, there will be like this huge 1000 BNB distributed among validators.
So currently, I'm not sure if you know why, but for example, let's say, one of the validator is getting put into jail because he has been offline for a certain amount of time. All the reward that has been collected by him until now, they are going to be slashed from him and they're going to be sent to all the other validator. So this is already part of the logic on chain within our smart contracts. So this is why it's happening as well like this, because it's already, let's say, part of the logic that is applied.
It's a well-defined path, so to speak, for everyone. It's not, naturally.
Exactly. Then I think we can move on to the upcoming update. So exactly when is it going to happen as well? And after that, what are the steps as well? So as I said, currently it's already in testnet. We have been launching the phase 2 in testnet already. We have done like a few audits, a few others are still ongoing to ensure that there is no issue before the release on the mainnet. The expected timeline for the mainnet is mid or end of June 2023, so within a few weeks. It's going to introduce this Luban update is going to introduce the first version of the fast finality. On top of that, we're going to update as well our cross-chain layer manager and the Comet BFT Lite block validation, which is this last one is really important as well for the connection with Greenfield to ensure a good fee management and transaction fee management. So that's one of the main updates that is upcoming for the next months. After that, we're going to release another like the plateau updates for the mainnet, which is expected for end of July or mid of July, which is the second part of the fast finality. And the bigger one, which is expected for August, which is going to bring Bern and London on BSC as well. Because as you know, we might have a lot of lag in some EIP, so we are trying to bring a lot of new EIP from ETH community towards BSC as well. So those are expected to be delivering as well, like in August 2023. So we expect to bring, I think 4 or 5 or maybe 6 as well EIPs over to BSC again. So that's one of the roadmap for the next 2 to 3 months.
I see that. So the London upgrade is the one that has introduced the EIP 1159, right?
Correct.
With the fees burned. So can you maybe light a little bit on that? How is it going to be the same on the BSC? Are we going to support the same burn-in mechanism? How does it work?
So we're not going to support exactly the same mechanism. The value is going to be set to 0 at the beginning. So we're going to try to implement it as much like as similar as it is, but with a few. The parameters are not going to be exactly the same value.
Like a dummy implementation in a way.
Exactly. So it's really important for all of the layer tools and the account abstraction as well. So this is one of the reasons like we are as well like pushing heavily on it to ensure that all those new protocols are able to easily migrate as well over to BSC.
Okay, cool. Do we have any date on the Shanghai?
We don't have a date yet, but let me revert back with the team and then we can push an update. But I know it's in the plan as well. And then we can go maybe to Greenfield because I know we have a lot of updates as well for Greenfield from the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let me maybe go up. Here we go.
Yeah, so recently there was a testnet update in the Greenfield testnet, which was called Macon, and there were a few things integrated in a part of like bug fixing and regular stuff, which the team already started to work on the how to sort of like work with the storage providers in terms of the mechanism where where user can switch storage providers and migrate files between those. So there were a few initial like implementation and sort of like grounding work to enable this, and for the storage provider also to initiate the migration by themselves, whether they want to get out of the network or they have some kind of particular issues. So sort of like more, it's not grand features in terms of like, it's not a flashy one, but it is like an infrastructure that eventually allows for everything to work smoothly. From the user perspective, there was a big change in terms of endpoints. And as some of you know, before there was a designated, we'll get to it like to this particular. So there were designated endpoints in terms of the BSC testnet, which is only for Greenfield. So it was a little bit like people complained that it wasn't clear enough, and so
it was a bit messy.
Yeah, so so this was all cleaned up, and in the next slide we'll go through it. A little bit from the partner update from the D server, which is one of the initial DApp that started to work on the on the Greenfield infrastructure and also on the UI. Like they've been helping in terms of filling the gaps and making the workarounds if the API was not ready for that particular feature. So there was some work around permission management, more dashboards, so like to make it more sort of user-friendly and for users really start to be able to use it as a product by itself and not like a scanner or something. So there is a big progress there, and I invite everyone to try it out and also like to see if you can contribute to that project. It has really shown some good potential and some quite interesting features and like as an early adopter of the Greenfield. So maybe we can go to the next slide. So here, so I crossed out the previous endpoints and sort of like the migration with the arrow, so what you should be using now. So as I said, so previously we had a dedicated BSC testnet for the Greenfield with 5600. So now this was decommissioned, it doesn't really exist anymore, and now you can use the regular, so to speak, BSC testnet. And the ETH API and the Tendermint RPCs were also like put together and overloaded with the blockchain, Greenfield blockchain. So this is different blockchain. So there is within the Greenfield itself, there is also ledger. So this is the ledger. So this is the 5601. You'll notice that the chain ID is somewhat weird. It is not an integer, so you cannot really connect to it with the MetaMask. It will shout and complain. So this was done specifically so that you don't connect to it directly with the MetaMask. So if you want like to work with the Greenfield, like you should use it through the BSC or any other future bridges, because otherwise it doesn't make sense, like at least at this point.
Right, correct.
And the storage providers remaining like the same. We may have more, but this would be just like, I guess, will be SP8 and 7 and 9, whatever. But this is sort of dynamic anyway. Using the command line tool, you can list it and see what the storage providers are now serving the files. So this is sort of like irrelevant, but just for your information.
I think we have some upcoming tutorials as well that are going to be pushed to our documentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which are going to explain all of this.
We'll have more tutorials on the user side and also on the storage provider side. So like for the projects that wish to either to extend the functionality of the storage provider or to become one. So to streamline all the sort of like the logistics of how to set up everything, and I guess like to be more welcoming, like for the early developers to get into things.
Great. And I think we can go ahead to the upcoming one. I've heard from the team and from the community that there's a lot of upgrades planned for June, July, and August as well.
Yeah, so I think that there are several aspects of the enhancement. So the one is that on the storage provider IT, and naturally, as a storage provider, or the idea of the Greenfield is to be self-sustainable, a reliable platform. Then there is a lot of like backend systems that need to work smoothly, and for this, so the migration to the Helm was or support for Helm was introduced, which is like a variation of Kubernetes realm, and for people to be able to run it like more smoothly, and also some implementations and improvements on the garbage collector to be able to release preemptively resources and naturally like reduce the cost of overall operation. As when we talk about storage provider as a business, when you serve and store hundreds of terabytes and petabytes of data, even like small like these improvements on the scale can make a lot of difference. So this is why like this kind of garbage collector improvement can have really important aspects of day-to-day operation. And from the file management, this is by the way interesting. So besides the increasing the overall max file to 64 gigabytes, so this is by itself also like now enables more use
Is
cases.
this by default, or is it something that can be customized by different SP, or right now it's only 64 max?
It's a support. So if you have a file like of 65 gigabytes, before this, you couldn't even upload this big files. So it wasn't very suited for for video platforms or things like this, or something like from the scientific research where you have these huge files of, I don't know, like pictures of comets. And now you can actually support these files. So it's not a matter of configuration or default. It's if users have files of this size, now they can be uploaded directly and they don't have to do anything with it. And naturally, part of the reason because this kind of huge files were not supported was that connection instability, and you just couldn't do it reliably, upload it, then the network was some like the usual stuff, like it got disrupted and then you need to start all over again, and it just was a mess. So now once this has been resolved and breakpoint resumable transmission is supported, so now even if the connection breaks, Wi-Fi disappears, something like this, you can still do this, and it's sort of like more cloud experience now. So if you just don't have internet, it just the speed goes to zero, but it doesn't. You don't really get an error, or the whole thing shuts down. So you just wait, or you do something, and then it just continues.
That's great.
So this is very important aspects of day-to-day operation, and like to be able to support more use cases. And also an interesting work was done on the storage provider framework interfaces, essentially to be able to extend storage provider both like functionality, infrastructure, and make it more standardized so that people can introduce new use cases. We don't know which one, because but at least like they have a framework, so let's start doing something. So I guess once projects come to fruition and start introducing new features, then that part of the system will get more and more iterations. And some of the work was done like on the file management more. You can now like adding, deleting, like this kind of stuff. So it's more user-friendly, more easy. The consolidation of API is done. Like now you have grouping, supporting for folders. So it's become more like mature product in a way, like in terms of you can really start using it and not just like trying to pinpoint every file. It was very difficult to manage. It was working, but it was very difficult to work with. So now it's much more manageable. And also a recommendation engine for the storage provider, introducing of metrics for the which storage provider is better than others, like this kind of stuff. So more work is done on that part to enable users to like intelligently pick a storage provider and see which one is better.
Yeah, it's becoming a more and more mature product as well. That's for sure. It's still early stage at the end, but still like really mature already. We can see the advancement.
Absolutely. And we also have like on the sort of like, if previous slide was more like on short term, I guess this one would be on the more midterm. And here we can also see it's a little bit different focus. Here we are focusing on ramping more storage providers in terms of reference architecture. So for instance, if anyone wants to use a particular cloud storage provider as a storage provider in Greenfield, so this is naturally allowed. And initially, this is like also a lot of the storage provider will be like this. And it's not sort of a risk for the operation, because eventually it still be dispersed across different cloud providers. But later, like at least in the beginning, like for the people just to get to understanding and not to like drown in the IT installations. So a few architecture references will be done for each of the more popular cloud provider, and then as we go, more and more will be done sort of like vanilla implementation of bare hardware for the more operational storage provider, and also naturally to reduce costs and to make it more maintainable. So this is like on one part. So this is more like a business development / operation strategy. Naturally to improve user experience, so to enable multiple uploads, to enable again like increase throughput, reduce latency, so that everything just works much smoothly. Even like from the client perspective, you have to wait and upload one by one manually. So if you put everything together, we can do some sort of a lot of optimization in terms of like even to the point either to create some kind of multicasting in terms of uploading different files directly, or even try to do some kind of packing in terms of like combining everything together and sending as one file if it's a lot of small files. So there are different strategies, which like mature strategies to enable faster upload and serving as well. And I guess like from the user perspective, one of the more of the requested tools were naturally file migration.
Correct.
So that I can easily migrate my files from one platform to another, and not to have like to deal with all this, and ideally even like to remain the same naming conventions, like this kind of stuff. So it sort of like remains the same, only to change the domain name from some cloud provider to Greenfield, and that would just it. So this is something, a lot of work is going to be done on that in terms of naming to see how it works. And also on the caching, like on the CDN perspective, how do we serve hot files? How do we serve like small files, like this kind of stuff?
Great. There's a lot of upcoming good features that are coming to Greenfield, so it's going to be more and more useful as well for people to easily build apps and product on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's because the core is built, but like these small features essentially what makes the product successful and adoption broader. So like it doesn't seem like a lot, but again, like this is something that if for instance migration tool actually allows people to migrate the whole files and actually using, then this is like the feature of the month should be.
Correct, exactly. Hopefully we'll be able to present it like next time or in a tutorial as well, so we can really show people how it's used. I think it's all for Greenfield, which was already a lot. So I think we can go a bit on the update for layer tools like ZKBNB and OPBNB. So we have a few updates as well to provide here. So for the ZKBNB, as some of you might have seen on the forum, we're currently running the trusted setup of the MPC ceremony. So this process basically involves generating multiple keys from shared secrets, for example. It has been run already by a few validators within the community, and as well a few external projects as well within BNB Chain. It's still up and running by some projects. We saw that a few of you have contacted us on the forum, so we're going to reach out to you as well. The final date to apply is 2 days. So if you want to join us as well, if you're a project and you want to join in running the ceremony, feel free to go to the forum and let us know. We hope to finalize it within the coming days. And after that, we're going to release as well the ZKBNB mainnet. So the tentative launch date is for the June 2023. So something that we are really looking forward, because it's going to help on lowering the transaction cost, higher throughput as well for projects which have like standard tokens, for example. So we are really looking forward for this.
And the result of the trust hub setup will be available publicly, right? So that everyone can actually
correct.
see.
So we started uploading already. yeah, on GitHub we already started uploading some files, but we can maybe link it in the comment as well or in the description, and you can see like more detailed. And we're going to announce it as well, like once everything is finalized as well.
Great.
In June as well, we have an exciting month, that's for sure. The Optimism BNB is going to set his testnet launch as well. We are waiting for the final date from the team, but basically it's going to offer significantly as well lower gas fee compared to Optimism. It is featuring as well a higher capacity. So as you know, like BSC layer 1 by default has a higher capacity in terms of gas limits. So this higher capacity on the layer 1 as well offers us to be able to have a higher capacity on layer 2s. So this is something that is going to be really helpful for the transaction costs as well, especially for projects that are going to be really able to lower heavily on the transaction cost. Maybe we can release as well an article, or I don't know if you have some data more linked to the cost of usage as well of the ZK or the OP.
Interesting also will be how it sort of like overlays with the finality features that and puts, when you put everything together, how does this sort of like reinforces the optimizations one of the other.
Yeah, correct. It's getting more and more complex, but more and more innovative as well within the BSC ecosystem. And of course, so once we have a final date as well, we're going to release more news around it. And I think there is already a source code that is open, so feel free to go check it out on our GitHub. I think that's it for today's updates. Thanks for joining. We're going to keep updating as well on our roadmap and providing more details on our forum. So feel free to join us if you want to have more information. And I don't know, Vic, if you want to say a final word for today. Or...
I think just like, as you said, like I advise people to join more on the forum. So we are posting more and more details around the roadmap, around the foreseen features, and everyone is welcome to participate to essentially provide the feedback. And we already seen some of the interesting conversations around the distributed data processing feature that is planned for the Greenfield, like more on the long term. So like there is a debate around how to better do it and what kind of use cases to support, like what kind of tools to enable, and just like from your perspective, for everyone, it's just like interesting to see how people see different problems and solutions from their own point and their own industry. So like just either to actively participate or just out of interest, feel free to join the forum debate and like see where it goes.
Great. See you next time, Vink.
Absolutely. You too.